Social anxiety predominantly impacted my life during high school years. When I started year 7, I started noticing that my thinking was just dominated by these worries about how they were perceiving me and how that aligned or didn't align with how I wanted to be perceived. So I would often think incessantly about, okay, well, when I go and speak to this person next, I should remember this, or I should say this. So I would pre-plan my actions and my words, and then when I interacted with them, I would act it out as if it was an act. And so when I believed that I'd done something wrong, I would then endeavour to right that wrong as soon as possible. So I would find that person and I would just unnecessarily apologise repeatedly, again and again, until I felt that I had made it right. That sort of interaction continued for year 7, 8, 9. It all sort of came to a head during, in New South Wales, what was called the school certificate exams. So I was sitting the English exam, and one of the questions, which was very typical, was just a picture, and I believe it said, describe this landscape, which I found very frustrating because I would start. The anxiety that I had often created had begun to create some performance anxiety, because I would be doing this question and I would think, oh, if I don't get this right, it's going to affect my mark. And if I don't achieve a certain mark, then what are people going to think of me? So as a lot of my anxieties were around judgment by others and how I felt they were judging me. Essentially, I had what I believed to be was my first panic attack. My hands started to shake uncontrollably. I started to sweat. And I just couldn't think clearly. My mind was absolutely consumed by these thoughts of what others would think, rather than just focusing on describing this image. Fortunately, I was able to come off that spiral and sort of just sit down, get it done. But for me, that moment was when I decided to take control, take responsibility, and I just said enough. I'm not enjoying feeling this way. I don't want to feel this way any longer, and so I really need to do something about it. From there, that was when I actually started talking to people, which is something I wish I had done several years before, because it turns out that was quite helpful. So I spoke with the school counsellor, who was very helpful and very generous with their time, but within the limits of their own ability, in the sense of being the school counsellor, having many students to care for. They suggested that I speak to a psychologist. Psychology sessions are very useful, and I walked away from that feeling much better, but also there was a noticeable improvement in my ability to manage that anxiousness. So from there, throughout year 11 and 12, the social anxiety continued, but I understood what was happening. I had techniques to manage what was happening. When the exams and the high school certificate exams came around, my experience was very different, and that I was able to manage that anxiety when it came up. But there was also those worries, those intrusive thoughts that I had about performance and how I would be perceived because of it. I just managed them a lot more effectively, and I think it's that classic, just as you can spiral down, there was almost like a spiral up, in that when I saw that it was working, it gave me confidence to continue.